Welcome to the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, your morning shot of what's new in the world of real estate investing. I'm your host, Victor Menashe. On today's show, we're taking a look at what's happening with construction materials and how this might affect your construction projects that you have in your plans for later this year. In the past 2 months, we've seen lumber prices fall from their peak in March at $1,450 per thousand board foot to a new low of $667 per thousand board foot. Prices had dropped in April and then jumped back up to approximately $1,000 per thousand board foot in anticipation of increased construction activity in the spring and summer months. In order to understand what's happening and what we can expect in the coming months, we need to look at the various forces affecting new construction. On the supply side of the equation, lumber mills in British Columbia, which supplies about 50% of Canadian softwood lumber and about 15% of the U.S. supply for new home construction, in November, there were heavy rains in British Columbia that washed out several highways and 2 rail lines, which cut off nearly all of the supply routes from British Columbia to the U.S. and the rest of Canada, and that persisted for more than a month. Prices spiked in response to the supply shortage. The supply side in British Columbia has not recovered. Sawmills are still operating below capacity even now, and that's partly responsible for the continued elevated prices. The drop in prices is coming from a number of factors on the demand side of the equation. New home sales are down slightly in both Canada and the U.S., but the decline in housing starts is only 0.2%. That's not enough to cause a substantial impact on lumber prices. The major sell-off in shares of national home builders like DR Horton and Lennar reflects an expectation that the combination of rising interest rates and rising construction costs will reduce demand for new homes. Some builders have stockpiled materials in order to secure supply, and as spot prices fall, they will want to consume their now more expensive inventory and buy new inventory in the future when lower priced material works its way through the supply chain. I've had several discussions with contractors who have experienced massive scheduling problems as a result of material shortages of all kinds. The common lament is they get booked for a job only to arrive on site and experience material shortages. The subtrades are then left with no work instead of having too much work. Large-scale projects are generally optimized to maximize the efficiency of the scarce resource, which is usually human labor. But when the scarce resource is material and changes from one week to the next, it can cause delays all over the construction project. Scheduling of trades in this environment has become much more complex, and it's common for a construction site to sit idle for weeks at a time. Now, if the foundation is done and you've got the wood available and the framing crew, you should be good to go. You might be tempted to think that you should be able to make forward progress on the structural framing, but that's not necessarily the case. Let's imagine for a moment that the scarce resource is roof trusses. If you're going to wait 12 weeks to get roof trusses, you have to wait to start framing your structure until you can actually take delivery of the roofing structure. You can't leave a partially framed structure exposed to weather for months. It'll suffer damage from wind and rain, and you'll not meet the specifications when you're done. You then face the more expensive demolition and rework scenario, and you definitely want to avoid that. If your critical path item is windows, you might need to wait so that your building is weather tight within a few days of completing framing, or at most a few weeks. These delays then cascade the entire construction project. So when your framers are not busy framing because they're waiting, then the demand for lumber drops because you've got framers all over North America sitting in their trucks idle, waiting to start the next job. The housing starts statistics still shows a large number of housing starts. A 0.2% change in starts is insignificant, so you would expect the demand for lumber to be constant, but the completions will be delayed because of the inefficiencies permeating the entire construction world. Even if housing starts didn't drop at all, supply chain constraints elsewhere in the process are slowing the entire construction process, making it much less efficient than in the past. And that inefficiency translates into a fall in demand for materials because houses and apartments are taking much longer to build. My prediction is that we're going to continue to see lumber prices fall over the summer months. Some general contractors that were fully booked for 2022 and were only accepting large-scale projects for 2023, we're now seeing many of them recognize the inefficiencies inherent in the current situation, and they're willing to accept new projects on very short notice as gap fillers. With the ongoing delays of products coming from China, we can also expect to see further delays in construction completions throughout 2022 and well into 2023, and therefore I'm predicting falling material prices over the next 2 to 3 months. As you think about that, have an awesome rest of your day. Go make some great things happen. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.